was said that you should never disagree on foreign policy. But our foreign policy is a mess. It's costing us too much money and too many lives, and it's causing too much danger to our country. So this foreign policy needs to be changed to that of non-intervention, minding our own business, and not endorsing the principle of preventive war. You go to war only with a declaration of war.
That's right!
If we did that, we would be a much richer country. Our government has spent so much money in the last 10 years fighting wars that shouldn't have been fought that we are now an additional $4 trillion in debt because of it. So this means a greater burden. That's $4 trillion out of our economy. Just think how much richer we would be. But we are a poorer nation right now. We owe foreigners over $3 trillion, almost half of it to the Chinese. Our national debt is now nearly $16 trillion. We have a debt increase each year of $1.5 trillion. It's unsustainable. Anybody can realize this, and I think most people are starting to. And I think this is why there's been a shift in attitude. Yes, we had a little attention 4 years ago, but I've been talking about this for a long time, but it's never been like this before. These last 4 years have dramatically changed because people know that this financial crisis is not a little recession that we're going through, and they're not going to get out of this easily. And they also know that they're sick and tired of the wars, and that it's time that we just bring our troops home and mind our own business.
That's right!
You know, we get a lot of questions asked about the other candidates, and generally I don't say too much about them personally, unless I'm asked. I'm not afraid to say something. But I really think that whether it's the other Republican candidates or what we have, the individual we have in the White House, I sincerely believe that they represent the past. It's just past. It's not the present either. I am convinced the message of freedom, the message of limited government, it is the future. The future is ours, and I believe very sincerely that intellectually that we are winning this fight, and we will win it politically as well.
That's right!
But a lot of work has to be done, and you know, tomorrow might be a good place to start with a very powerful message around the country. We're still working our way through the primary. Obviously, the caucus states are better for us, and it'll take a couple months, but tomorrow is a very important day, so I hope you can all participate. But of course, to me, what's dear to my heart is the message of liberty, and the reason why, and trying to understand exactly the reasons how we got into this mess. It didn't happen overnight. It is so easy and to come down and say it was all Obama's fault. Well, he's caused a lot of trouble. There is no doubt it. And he certainly hasn't done us much good by wanting to have this Obamacare and things like that. But these problems are structural, and they've been going on for 100 years. But I believe that they started in the Woodrow Wilson era, got much worse in the Depression, but really got bad after 1971 when our Federal Reserve and our government permitted us to dislink our dollar in any way whatsoever to gold. That meant there were no restraints on spending, no restraints on borrowing, and therefore the Federal Reserve was always there to buy debt. So we're a debt-ridden society. Literally, the more debt they buy, the more money they can print. It makes no sense whatsoever. That means there's no limit. And they've been doing this. Some like to spend on domestic welfare, others like to spend on foreign welfare. And what happens to the people? The people lose their money. It's a sinister way of taxing the people. Yes, we have direct taxation, but there's a limit. If we had only taxation to pay all our bills, this would all come to an end. And that's what Jefferson wanted. He didn't want it to even borrow, and he certainly didn't want a central bank. But just think if everybody had to just write a check, routinely to pay the bills. There would be a revolution. It would be all over in no time. This is why I introduced a bill, knowing that it wouldn't go anywhere. I wanted to repeal withholding. And that meant that if the businessman wasn't forced to be the tax collector, I mean, we all bow down, we collect the taxes, pass them on. There's a discrepancy. We have to prove our innocence. It's a terrible, terrible system. And yet, if everybody had to write a check at the end of every month to pay the government, and we weren't allowed to go in debt, believe me, we would have a very, very small government, the kind of government we could live with. But for some reason we took the easy way out. And my best understanding of this is that freedom creates a lot of prosperity. So we were blessed with a lot of natural resources. We were blessed with a group of founders that wrote a pretty darn good constitution. Has problems, but really the best. And we ended up with a maximum amount of freedom and prosperity. But then we as a nation looked at the prosperity when we became more materialistic. And that is, the material benefits became our driving force. And then special interest groups looked to the government for the redistribution, and we forgot about how it's made and produced. People have to produce wealth. Governments destroy wealth. They don't produce any wealth whatsoever.
That's right.
So then we institutionalized the redistribution of wealth through the tax system. We had 1913 was a bad year. We had the income tax. When the Republic returns, we'll repeal the 16th Amendment. We won't have any. And also we've had the Federal Reserve System, the central bank that Jefferson argued against. We've had it for 99 years. And they lost 98% of the value of the dollar that they had in 1913. I'd say they were doing a pretty lousy job. So next year when we have the opportunity, we should introduce or pass legislation that repeals, on the celebration of 100 years, let's repeal the Federal Reserve Act.
Yeah! Sounds like a good idea!
But change in economic policy does absolutely require the change in monetary policy. But it has to be changed. Also, we have to have an understanding about markets, free markets, voluntary contracts. The government now interferes with more contracts than it protects. They're supposed to protect contracts, not set all the rules for the contracts. I saw something this morning that was rather disturbing, and you'd think I would never be disturbed about big government growing, but there was a report that said that on January 1st, instead of us winning this fight in Washington and around our governments around the country of shrinking the size of government, there were 40,000 new laws put on the book in January this year.
Oh my God.
Now, what we need to work for is the day that we have a lot more to say about it. Possibly I, as your president, would say... Maybe then our goal should be the repeal of 40,000 laws in 1 year. Nobody has the vaguest idea of all the laws, and nobody can understand them all. And it came about because we've gotten so careless. The Constitution is rather explicit. There's only one body that's allowed to write law, and that's the legislative branch. But guess what? Does the executive branch write law? All the time. They have executive orders and signing statements and regulations.